It was just a tough year last year. One doubt for a second, and I ain't like that feeling.
Shedeur Sanders just said something out loud that nobody expected him to admit. Not to a reporter chasing a headline, not in a press conference where every word gets picked apart. He said it on a song, in an Apple Music interview, in his own voice, on his own terms. He had a doubt, a real one, about himself. And if you know anything about this kid, you know that is not something he says lightly. Today we're breaking down the turning point Shedeur Sanders just revealed, what actually caused it, and why the timing of this confession might be the most important thing he's done all off-season. Let's start with what actually happened, because a lot of people are going to hear Shedeur Sanders had a doubt and turn it into something it's not. This was not a meltdown. This was not him waving a white flag. This was a young quarterback sitting down for an Apple Music interview tied to his new music release and being honest about a year that would have broken a lot of guys. Go back to April of last year. Every mock draft had Shedeur going in the first round. Some had him going in the top 10. Instead, he sat in that green room, then sat at home and watched name after name get called ahead of him for 5 straight rounds. He didn't come off the board until the 5th, pick 144. That is not a small thing to process for a guy who was supposed to be a top pick. Then the season started, and it didn't get easier. He wasn't working with the first-team offense. He wasn't the guy the coaching staff had their arm around. He watched Dillon Gabriel get the reps, get the trust, get the head start. And when he finally did get on the field, it was because someone else went down, not because it was his turn. So when Shedeur says he had one doubt and he didn't like that feeling, that's not dramatic. That's just true. He said it put him in a different place mentally. He said it made him question a lot of things. Those are not the words of a guy who's used to failing. Those are the words of a guy who has never really had to sit with that feeling before and suddenly had to sit with it for months. What makes this moment matter is what he did next. He didn't stay there. He said he had to reach back and self-evaluate, get back to who he actually is, because that's the only way he knows how to operate. That's the turning point, not the doubt itself, the decision to climb back out of it. And now, heading into 2026, that story is following him into a real quarterback competition in Cleveland, which means this confession isn't just a look back, it's context for everything that's about to happen on that practice field.
One doubt for a second, and I ain't like that feeling. So then I had to reach back and self-evaluate myself and really understand, like, I got to get back to me. Got to get back to me because that's the only way I could operate. That's the only way that I could be. But due to everything, that happened, draft, everything, like, it put me in a different place mentally. It made me question a lot of things. And, it was tough for me, honestly, but I made it out of that.
So here's the real question. If the most talented guy in that draft class can admit he doubted himself, what does that tell you about the pressure the rest of that quarterback room is dealing with right now? Here's the part of the story that gets skipped over. This wasn't just a draft slide. This was a rookie season with almost no runway. Shedeur wasn't handed the job. He wasn't handed reps with the starters. By most accounts, he spent a big chunk of last year working behind Dillon Gabriel, who was clearly the guy the previous coaching staff, led by Kevin Stefanski, had bought into. Stefanski's since moved on. He's now the head coach in Atlanta. But at the time, Shedeur was the third option behind Joe Flacco and Gabriel, and he only got on the field once injuries forced the issue. Think about what that actually means day to day. You're not practicing with the ones. You're not getting the coaching attention the starter gets. You're watching the guy ahead of you struggle on tape, but you're still the one sitting on the bench. And every week, cameras are catching your body language on the sideline, and commentators are building narratives about whether the coach even wants you there. That's the environment Shedeur was operating in when he says his confidence took a hit for what sounds like the first time in a long time. This is a guy who was the face of a Colorado program that went from an afterthought to national relevance, a guy who's been doubted before and always had the answer ready. This was different because for once, the doubt wasn't just coming from outside, it was starting to get inside his own head. And that's exactly why this Apple Music moment matters. He's not saying this on a podium during the season with cameras rolling and reporters ready to twist it. He's saying it now in the off-season on his own platform, tied to his own music. That's a controlled environment. That's a guy choosing when and how to tell his own story instead of letting the outside noise write it for him. Because make no mistake, the outside noise has been loud. Half the football world has been rooting for him since Colorado. The other half has been waiting for him to fail since the day he fell to the 5th round. Both sides have been talking. This was the first time in a while that Shedeur decided to talk back on his terms about what that year actually felt like from the inside.
And I know he feels that, but listening to that, the one thing that I love about Shedeur Sanders and always have is his confidence. And if he gets that back, watch out.
And that's kind of the main storyline through this whole thing, right? Like, he's talking about how for the first time in quite some time, he lost his confidence. It was not there. That's what I think the one doubt that he's talking about in that interview clip really is. He was starting to doubt his confidence, his ability for the first time in quite some time. And that taxes on a player. It doesn't matter if you're the best player in the world. It doesn't matter if you're the Mr. Irrelevant, a practice squad player, whoever.
Now, here's the reality check. Not everybody wanted to hear a young quarterback admit any of this, and this week, that became very obvious. While Shedeur was out hosting a free youth football camp for 500 kids in Brooklyn, Ohio, teaching the game, giving back, doing exactly the kind of thing his critics claim he never does, 2 different media voices decided that was the moment to go after him. First, on ESPN Cleveland, when asked about a Cleveland sports storyline he's sick of, one host went straight at Shedeur, calling the idea that he hasn't gotten a fair shot a victim storyline. His co-host actually pushed back on that in real time, pointing out Shedeur didn't get reps with the starters until he was thrust into a game in Vegas out of necessity. The response back was basically he was a 5th-round pick, other guys were ahead of him, that's just how it goes. Then, on the same day, Rex Ryan, a former NFL head coach turned television talking head, posted a shot at Shedeur online, taking a jab, in quotation marks, about him supposedly needing to realize there's more we than me, tagging it with grow up. That criticism came in response to a photo shoot Shedeur did at his own house, wearing his own Browns jersey. Not a rant, not a demand, a photo shoot in his own team's jersey. Sit with that for a second. A guy spends his Sunday running a free camp for 500 kids, and the same day, 2 grown men in media make him the target anyway. One over an opinion about fairness, the other over a photo shoot involving his own team's jersey. This is the exact noise Shedeur was talking about in that interview. This is what surrounds him every single week, whether he's playing well, playing poorly, giving back to the community, or just posting a photo at home. And it explains why the confession about doubt lands so differently once you see what he's dealing with in real time. It is genuinely hard to find a version of this story where Shedeur is the one acting out. He's not the one throwing jabs on social media. He's not the one manufacturing a storyline out of a photo shoot. He's the one running camps and admitting, honestly, that a brutal year got to him for a while. That contrast, the noise around him versus what he's actually doing, is exactly why this turning point moment is resonating right now.
The Shedeur is the victim storyline. That he hasn't been given his chance, that he's got to go out there with an offensive team, that he's being rushed in, that he's never given the opportunity. That's a storyline.
He's gotten a fair shot. You think the way they handled him last year, without playing with the
Here we go. I didn't mean to start this.
I'm just saying, without playing with the ones until he was on the field in Vegas.
Okay. He was drafted in the 5th round, and they had others ahead of him.
So think about that for a second. If you had to prove yourself every single week while also defending yourself off the field for things that never happened, how long would your confidence actually hold up? Here's why this all matters heading into camp. Quarterbacks and rookies are already reporting to Berea. The real competition, the one that decides who's under center for the Cleveland Browns in 2026, is about to start playing out in practice reps, not headlines. And the version of Shedeur walking into that building is not the one who just fell out of the 1st round. It's not the one who spent last year fighting for scraps of practice time behind Dylan Gabriel. It's a guy who's publicly said he went through it, sat with it, and came out the other side. That matters because the guy running the quarterback room now, new head coach and staff, gets a version of Shedeur who was already named the low point instead of pretending it never happened. There's a reason confidence keeps coming up every time people break down what's held Shedeur back in flashes last season. Remember that third preseason look, or the Ravens game where he got thrown in without a game plan built around him? Those weren't talent problems. Those were reps of a guy still finding his footing after a year that shook him more than people realized at the time. Now he's telling you on his own platform that he identified the problem and reset. That's not something guys usually say publicly unless they actually believe it, and it lines up with everything else we know about him. The guy who's first at practice, still working with kids in his off time, still building relationships in the building, even when the head coach's body language on the sideline told a different story last year. The bigger picture here is simple. 2025 tested Shedeur Sanders in a way his college career never did. Nobody doubted him at Colorado. Everybody in the NFL got a turn. And instead of hiding that, he just told the world about it in his own words, on his own timeline, right before the most important training camp of his career so far. Whatever happens with the quarterback competition this summer, one thing is already clear. Shedeur Sanders is walking into Berea with something he didn't have for most of last year. He knows exactly what broke his confidence, and he's already told everyone he found his way back.
Get a load of this kid. Great talent needs to realize as a franchise QB, in quotation marks, taking a jab at Shedeur there has to be more we than me. Come on, man. Hashtag Browns, hashtag NFL, hashtag dog pound, hashtag grow up.
And that's really the whole story here. It was never about the talent. It was about whether he could hold on to himself through everything that came with the fall. He just told everyone he did. Let's recap what we actually know. Shedeur Sanders fell to the 5th round after being projected as a first-rounder. As a rookie, he barely got reps with the starters, played behind Dillon Gabriel for most of the year under the previous coaching staff, and only took over once injuries opened the door. In a new Apple Music interview tied to his music release, he admitted that stretch put him in a different place mentally, made him question things, and gave him one real doubt about himself for the first time in a long time. He also said he pulled himself out of it by getting back to who he is. That's the turning point. Not the low, the recovery from it. Meanwhile, the noise around him hasn't slowed down. This same week, while he was hosting a free camp for 500 kids, he still had to absorb a victim storyline label on the radio and a public jab from a former head coach over a photo in his own jersey. That's the environment. That's what makes the honesty in this interview stand out. Now he's walking into training camp with quarterbacks and rookies already reporting, heading straight into a real competition, carrying a version of himself that's already named the hardest part of last year out loud, instead of burying it. So here's where it lands. Shedeur Sanders had a rookie year that would have shaken anybody, admitted it publicly on his own terms, and says he already found his way back to who he is. Now the real test starts in Berea, with a genuine quarterback competition and a full training camp to prove it wasn't just something he said for a song. So do you think this turning point moment means Shedeur walks into camp more locked in than ever? Or do you think the doubt he described is still something he has to prove he's fully past once the pads come on? Let us know down in the comments. Smash like and subscribe.